You're listening to a podcast by Way Collective, a contemplative community for love and liberation in Santa Barbara, California. This recording was the conversation starter at our dinner and dialogue gathering on July 2nd, 2025. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey everybody, it's great to be with you all as we continue our series about artificial intelligence and how do we stay human in this age of AI, this age of rapid change. And I'd like to take you back for a moment to a time from my youth that has stayed with me all of these years. My brother David and my college roommate Sarah and I were driving home for Thanksgiving from Seattle to Eastern Washington. It was a cold November day on Snoqualmie Pass, and despite it being a sunny, clear morning, we hit a patch of black ice. And as the car began to spin 360 degrees around, my world felt completely out of control. And as I watched the green trees whirl by the windows, Sarah's voice from the back seat was the only thing that I heard. Brace yourself, brace yourself. And we did. And when we came to a complete stop, we were facing the right direction. And David just calmly started driving away again. One of us laughed. And for many years after that, with a sense of relief and humor, we greeted each other with those words, brace yourself. And I find myself thinking about that moment now because at this pivotal time, navigating this age of AI and what some people are calling the next industrial revolution. It's going to be as big as the industrial revolution. Things for me are feeling just a little bit out of control. Brace yourself. And so let's do that tonight, not out of fear, but with a sense of curiosity and connection and conversation, staying aligned with our contemplative values in this time of rapid change. And wow, things are really moving fast. Just this past Monday, on June 30th, Microsoft announced a new AI tool designed to help doctors detect diseases earlier. It combines several of those large language models to mimic how human doctors collaborate. And it's not meant to replace doctors, but it may help them boost their accuracy and reduce costs. In a recent study, this AI tool correctly diagnosed up to 85% of case records from the New England Journal of Medicine at a rate of more than 4 times higher than a group of experienced doctors who had a 20% accuracy rate on average. And the AI tool was also more cost effective. So Microsoft says, quote, important challenges remain, but we're energized by the opportunities ahead. We strongly believe the future of healthcare will be shaped by augmenting human expertise and empathy with the power of machine intelligence. And that sounds really promising. It is really promising. Combining machine intelligence with human expertise and empathy and having it be more cost effective, this could really move the needle forward with healthcare. But it also raises some really important questions. What's the source of the data that the AI is learning from? And is the data being used ethically? And perhaps most importantly, can doctors and patients actually understand how the AI tool is making its decisions? And this brings us to something that's really important to understand when we're talking about AI, and that's the concept of the black box. So a black box is a system or process where the inputs and outputs are known, but where the internal workings are invisible. We can't see them and we can't really understand how it's working, how it got to the decisions. And in this context of artificial intelligence, especially in these complex AI systems, we really don't fully understand the steps it takes to get the results it does. And even the developers of these systems often can't explain it in human terms. Here's an example. You're using your GPS to get from point A to point B. You're happily driving along, but suddenly you realize that something doesn't seem right. It doesn't feel right. And the GPS has taken you a strange way, or it's added time to your trip. And you're left wondering, how did that happen? How did I get here? And we've all been there, right? Well, that's the black box problem in a nutshell. You can give the GPS your destination, the input, and it gives you a route, the output. But the decision-making process, how it figured out the different roads to take, the traffic to avoid, that's hidden from our view. We don't get to see or question the logic behind the choices that it's making. And that might be okay for GPS, but now imagine that an AI tool with that same black box problem is making decisions where the stakes are much higher, and we don't know how or why it reached a specific conclusion. For example, when AI is used for reviewing resumes and it decides who gets called for a job interview and who doesn't. Or when AI algorithms decide which news stories you see or don't see. Or when the AI decides who is placed on a watch list or denied a visa. So this can make it difficult to trust, to validate, or even challenge decisions made by AI, especially in critical areas like healthcare, hiring, law enforcement, or education. And it also raises concerns about fairness, bias, accountability, and safety. If we can't explain the system, how the system reached its conclusions, we can't ensure it's being ethical or accurate. Even well-intentioned AI systems can carry bias, often because they're trained on tons of historical data that already reflects inequities in our society. So we don't need to fear technology, but for the sake of safety and ethics and its potential for bias, we sure do need to stay awake, stay informed, and we need to question it. We need to stay human. Staying informed is a powerful way to stay rooted and grounded in our contemplative values, especially in these times of such rapid change. So let's keep learning together, keep questioning, and let's advocate for greater safety and guardrails. Let's advocate for transparency. We need these systems to be transparent and explainable. And let's advocate for accountability so that when something does go wrong, we know who's responsible. And let's advocate for equity so that no one is left behind or unfairly impacted by tools they never asked for or may not fully understand. Let's brace ourselves, not out of fear, but with curiosity, compassion, and connection. And now, here's Tim to talk a little bit more about the environmental impacts of AI, how it might be affecting our jobs in the future, and of course, really, how can we stay human in this time of rapid change? How can we stay connected to our values as a contemplative community?
Thanks, Tracy. Well, friends, as we continue this unfolding conversation about what it means to stay human in the age of AI, as Tracy said, I just kind of want to shift our attention tonight also to the ethical dimension of AI's impact, to the earth beneath our feet and the very systems that sustain our lives. Because while we often marvel at what AI can do, how fast it can generate text, solve problems, and even mimic human creativity, there's a shadow side that we shouldn't ignore. a very physical side to its existence in the world. So take this. The average Google user searches about 30 times a week globally, and about closer to 35 if you live in the US. But a single ChatGPT request, it uses 10 times more energy than a Google search. So a Google search requires about 0.3 watt hours, and a ChatGPT query requires about 2.9 watt hours. So each ChatGPT search uses roughly the same energy as a 10 watt light bulb running for about 17 minutes. Isn't that wild? And that might not sound like much, but multiply that by millions or billions of queries, and suddenly we're talking about the energy equivalent of entire nations. And it's not just electricity. Every 20 to 50 prompts typed into ChatGPT uses up to half a liter of fresh water, mostly to cool the data centers that keep it running. That's a bottle of water gone, not for drinking, not for watering crops, but to cool machines. So in total, the global water usage of AI is projected to outpace the annual consumption of small countries if trends continue unchecked. So, this isn't all bad necessarily, because many of us likely use Google already without too much concern on its environmental impact. But with the statistics we just discussed, we should at least take notice of our usage, right? We should note that in 2 days' time, the normal 10 Google searches is the equivalent of one ChatGPT search over 2 days. Now, the point of this isn't necessarily to say that we need to stop, but rather that we pause. Because even as AI tries, to seem virtual and disembodied, it has consequences that are embodied and ecological. And this is what Geoffrey Hinton, who is the 2024 Nobel Prize winner in physics, and he's an AI pioneer, was getting at in his acceptance speech last year. He named the incredible potential of AI, that if its benefits are shared equitably, it could lift us all as humanity. But he also offered a sobering warning in saying that the rapid progress in AI comes with many short-term risks. It creates divisive echo chambers that offers people on both sides content that makes them indignant. Anybody seen that in your feed before? It's already being used by authoritarian governments for massive surveillance and by cyber criminals for phishing attacks. Then going on, he notes that there's also a longer-term existential threat that will arise when we create digital beings that are more intelligent than ourselves. We have no idea if we can stay in control, and we already have evidence that if they are controlled by companies motivated by short-term profits, our safety will not be their top priority. And so his recommendation is that we need more research on how to prevent this scenario from playing out. So that's one side of it. And I don't know if you saw this, but last week, an artist named Christoph Niemann wrote an article in NYT magazine saying this: if AI-generated art becomes the norm, he asks, will people still be able to make a living creating beauty? And he says, shouldn't artists have the right to stop their work from being used to build systems that destroy their livelihood? Because the models that are used are taking in existing art created by real artists and using those to generate their own AI art. And then he poses a deeper question. Is AI good or bad for the creative process? He admitted making art is hard, and it's supposed to be. Whether you're human or a machine, creative work consists of 1,000 tiny decisions. But how does one decide if an element is good, funny, sad, witty, or absurd? AI, he says, bases its picks on what's most prevalent in its training data, which is affected by biases, but creating art, he says, is a nonlinear process, which means that communicating emotions from person to person through mediums like writing or composing music or painting is inherently inefficient and inherently human. This hints at two things. Firstly, the future impact of AI not only is something that's going to be on artists, but on a plethora of different job markets, which will include things like job displacement, job transformation, as well as job creation. And this will likely create, as all major technological advances in the past have, both economic instability and skill gaps for workers, but also the need for policy and education around the importance of retraining and social safety nets to help workers transition. It's likely that governments and organizations will play significant roles in how AI affects labor markets. And the second thing I think it hints at is this. Again, it's the question that we dove into last week. How do we continue to catalyze our own creativity and also stay human in the age of AI? From a contemplative perspective, the invitation isn't to flee this moment or to decry technology in fear. It's to deepen our awareness and to remain rooted in our humanity and in our communities. And it's to remember what AI can't do, what it will never be: embodied, breathing, and emotive. AI will never weep when a friend dies. It won't laugh at the sheer absurdity of life. It can't grow old or fall in love. We do that. So to be human is not just to compute, but it's to commune. It's not just to synthesize information in our minds, but to sense, not just to automate. You know what I mean? It's to articulate, to feel, to fail, to begin again. And yes, to use technology as well, to let AI assist if you find it within your own ethical or moral taste to do so, but not to surrender the sacred, stumbling work of making meaning in our own voices. Because what's at stake here isn't just the environment or the economy, it's also the soul of our participation in the world. It's the risk that we become consumers of creation rather than the creators ourselves. It's the risk that we move faster but end up feeling less. It's the risk that we become more efficient but a little less alive. So tonight, as we hold these tensions, the excitement of innovation and the heaviness of its potential cost, I leave you with this recurring encouragement from last week: to stay awake, open, and whole. And so I ask us, in this moment of acceleration and automation, can we stay awake to our impact on the planet? Can we stay open to the moral questions that AI forces us to face as it continues to evolve? Can we stay rooted in our bodies, our breath, and our beauty? And can we stay tender toward the mysteries that each of us are? And can we resist the temptation to know everything instantly, like we all do, and instead choose to wait, choose to wonder, and choose to be incomplete sometimes? Let us remember, friends, we are not problems to be solved. Our personalities aren't algorithms to be pandered to. We are mysteries to be lived. So let's bring our full humanity, fragile, finite, and creative, into this evolving world. And if we do that, if we stay close to the soil, to our own souls, and to each other, then no matter where AI heads, it will not lead us away from ourselves. May it be so. Okay, tonight we want to offer you 3 questions for contemplation and conversation. The first question is the self question. As you engage with AI in your daily life, what ethical questions arise for you about when, how, and why you choose to use this technology? And how do you discern what aligns with your values and humanity? Number 2, the sacred question. How might staying awake, open, and whole to the mystery of being human deepen your sense of connection to what is sacred, especially in an age of accelerating technology? And lastly, number 3, the society question. What responsibilities do we share as a society to balance the incredible benefits of AI with its environmental, ethical, and economic costs? And how might we foster policies and practices that honor both innovation and human dignity? Thanks for listening to this podcast by Way Collective. To keep up with our community, you can subscribe to this podcast, go to www.waycollective.org, or follow us on Instagram at @waycollective. Peace and every good, y'all.